Hello everyone, my name is Hazel and this video is my reflection of Folio 2's iterative progressions for Illusion of Life. For Folio 2, I tasked myself to create 2 to 3 frame-by-frame animation sequences, each approximately between 5 to 10 seconds each, which would then be placed in an AR platform. While my Folio 2 outcome is not necessarily a collection of completed animated works, it is more so a collection of iterations which tells the story of my progression so far. My Folio 2's work inquiry has somewhat shifted in its exploration from perspective to now, the focus being on the subject matter and how the perspective we view them informs us of the scene's mood or emotion. The weekly exercises helped me to cultivate a more refined approach to tackling the second folio. Originally, I viewed the outcome to be a collection of completed animated works. The iterative approach to development instead informed me that this would give a more refined and completed outcome in terms of a spirit of inquiry. Based on feedback from Folio 1's related works, I branched out to looking at short animated films that had interesting points of views, perspectives, and simple animations. The Man with No Shadow is about a character stuck in the conformities of life who trades his shadow for the pursuit of adventure. The animation follows his journey as he goes through these colorful adventures while being followed by the silhouetted suits of his previous life. The transformation shots rotating forcefully around the main character in action is an incredibly original approach to camera work and animation. I enjoyed how the mood of the animation itself was somehow quite dark and fantastical, despite its simple animation. Some segments of this animation even reminded me of my morphing cube animation for one of my weekly exercises and my attempt to put this in AR. Jumping is a short animation about a young child who discovers that they can jump extremely high. They start to hop around from neighborhood to neighborhood and eventually jumps around the world in war-torn areas and to the highest and lowest of places. The first-person perspective is fascinating as we don't see what the character looks like, except for what they see. The art style is reminiscent of the hand-drawn animation of Studio Ghibli. I found the cartoonish art style an interesting combination with some of the more sophisticated experiments with its perspective. I've come to learn that even if the animation is not as complex or detailed, the gist of the movement or motion that communicates what it is doing and for this to translate to viewers is more important. As it was put really well in week 11, you can create a good caricature of an animation movement by distilling the most important aspects. For my project's motion or movement, I focused on 2 subjects, light movement and the catwalk. For light movement, this comprised of the movement of the light beam coming from a tram car running across the screen towards the right and exiting out of view. I tried various shapes of light and found that the warm circle glow seemed the most appealing at first. Based on feedback, I tried to combine the 2 shapes and found this to be the better outcome. For the first catwalk sequence, I found this the most challenging aspect of Folio 2, and it took a lot of time. As I had never animated an animal walk sequence before, I observed some of my cat's own movements for reference. I used their key movements as my keyframes and started from there. This way of animating pose to pose allowed me to understand and identify what the main movements were first, and afterwards work around them. It allowed for a more careful time management, and I found this calculated approach an easier way. For the second catwalk sequence, I took a different approach and went straight ahead with drawing as I went. This way of animating allowed for a more natural flow and gave an opportunity for improvisation. It allowed me to be a bit more creative as well. However, I found that I was taking much longer in this animation style. For the environment or background, I used one of my background designs from week 1, and I also illustrated a new alleyway background based on one of my site location visits for professional pre-production. The environment's iterative development focused mainly on iterating various distortions of perspective in order to make it work with a catwalk animation. I also used the concept of stillness, one of the weekly exercise topics for reference. What stands out most to me is how stillness can intensify the pause, the anticipation, or in my case, the catwalking. Creating the 2D animation sequences gave me the freedom to illustrate and animate in an artistic and personal style, while being able to experience the animation in AR brings them to life in a 3D staging. This is one of the most appealing aspects of AR. While I'm still in the early AR test stage, I am quite excited to see the refined outcomes as I take this exploration of 2D animation in AR further in my Magi course. In week 7, I experimented with Adobe Aero to see how it would render my 2D animations. The first test was not successful due to what I believe is a performance issue on the iOS application. Instead, I switched to the desktop application and was able to render the animation successfully in AR. I conducted 2 tests with iJack Creator. While my current preference would be to use iJack Creator for its simplicity and I currently have no need to render any 3D assets, I find both tools to have each of their own advantages. Adobe Aero allows for interactions to be triggered by either tapping or hovering the camera over the AR marker, amongst others. iJack Creator allows you to create your animations in AR in only 3 steps, and renders the AR really well. By exploring each tool's elements, I hope to be able to use them to create effective moods or emotions in the storytelling process, in a visual and personal style that stands out in the field of 2D animated augmented reality. While my collection of animations are not fully completed, my focus areas for the future are in the following: refinement of the frame-by-frame animation, adding texture to the cat's animation, more iterations of simple animal movements aside from walking, test plans for each AR tool, with Adobe Aero and iJack Creator as the first 2. Thanks for listening.